Oops. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Let me know in the chat if you can't hear me, if you can hear me, if I'm looking good, if I need a haircut or whatever's going on. Appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Phil Rice YouTube channel. Always a pleasure here to welcome the family. And thanks for putting your time aside to make some space to hang out today. So here we are. It's the 17th of September, 2024, and I've got a wonderful guest lined up. I'm just going to quickly run through some setup here. So thank you to everyone for coming along today. Like I said, if you would like to support the channel, you can go to philrice.substack.com. Things like liking and subscribing. These are also very helpful little things you can do. And I want to say a big thank you quickly to, and we'll get this sorted out. Nope, try that round that way. There we go. Thank you to Violet Flame Studios for sponsoring this month's live streaming software, and they're also got the game project is now up on Steam and Kickstarter. So it launches this week. So please go to the website and check out. That's the hub for where things are happening. So you can see there's a Kickstarter launch there. That's happening tomorrow, I believe. And also the Steam page is up, so you can add them to your wish list. Go check it out. There's a new video on there, worth your time. It's looking so cool. I had a play on it the other day. Check it out. Thank you so much, Violet Flame. And without further ado, I would like to bring on someone I've been looking forward to connecting with. We share a few mutual friends, but we haven't really made a lot of direct contact on the video here. So I'm going to bring forward the one and only, the much loved, and here he is right here. Mr. Joey Nishad. How are you, Joey, brother?
Hey, bro. Good morning. And I must say, this is very brave of you to go live with me because I'm not known for my, how shall I say, diplomacy. So, first of all, apologies in advance if I'm too candid with certain things. But with having said that, I appreciate the opportunity and I fully admire your braveness in going live for the first time.
Well, hey, thank you for coming on. And hey, that's fine. Look, seriously, there are some delicate topics that I think can be handled with a very rational and robust sort of approach. I know there is some contention in various communities on various topics, and I think it's okay just to talk about them, to be fine. And personally, brother, I enjoy your feeds, like what you share in that. And, you're very meticulous with your fleshing out of things. And, you're a bro on the path too. And, you're a well-traveled man. You've got a lot of experience with these topics as well. And so I'm just really excited. So please, you be as candid as you want to be, bro. It's really only up to YouTube what gets left on and what doesn't. So welcome, and thank you. I know it's super early where you are, and so I appreciate you giving us your time here today. And what's been happening, Joey? Are you back in Aussie? Are you still traveling?
No, actually, I've been back in Oz since maybe it was late April, I think it was. I can't quite remember. I think it might have been either late March or late April that I got back from the Philippines. And I've been staying put since then because my son was kind of in the last year of high school. So just wanted to hang around and hang out with him a bit more and not just disappear for like 3 months. You know what I mean? He's perfectly capable of, basically looking after himself and having a good time without me around. But I thought it might be nice to actually be around while he's in his last year of high school.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, good on you, Dad. That's good. Yeah. Okay. So what's on the cards? Have you got any travel coming up that you're looking forward to? Are you going? I know the Marshall Man's setting up another camp there, and I see you often at these events.
Yeah, so basically, I really like Kieran, and I really like him as a human being, and I think he's a really nice guy. And Mark's going to be there as well, so I wanted to go there and support Mark. But it's come to the point where I can no longer, with the right conscience, support events that are promoting people like Howard Wang. So I'm not going to Marshall Camp this year for that particular reason, because Howard Wang is going to be there. Because it's not going to be good if I go there. Because last time it took me a lot of restraint because he ended up hurting one of my friends and things like that. Like, when you trust a teacher with your body to demonstrate something on you, if the teacher uses your body as an example to, like overcompensate for shortcomings of the little man syndrome, that's not really nice. Like, people deserve better, especially people who trust you to show you something, right? You don't want to basically go out and hurt people just to show how big of a man you are, just because someone else threw you around and you made look like an idiot. You know what I mean? So yeah, nah, not this time. Maybe in the future. But unfortunately, I think if Howard and I cross paths, it's not going to end well for him.
Yeah, I think that when we come across these things that sort of like, that make us review our principles, our values, and the way that we operate in the world, and we set clear boundaries of operation, this is really important because, there's a lot, like, I've been a teacher of young students, right? And the responsibility came very apparent to me about the conduct that I displayed, how I embodied that, and genuinely, authentically sort of operated from that. And I had a lot of friends who were teachers as well, guitar teachers, and I've personally found that I couldn't recommend them because that we had quite different worldviews and also codes of conduct, and so I wouldn't actually recommend them. I would suggest they go to the guitar store and they can do it through that. But I couldn't outright just like set someone up with someone that I knew they may have been good at what they could do, but there was the way that they operated wasn't necessarily aligned with how I would. So I wouldn't put people onto them as well. So and you have to take this is professionalism too. Like you set yourself up by how you walk and suggest and refer people to other things. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure you've got good reason for the way that you feel about it. And it's a shame because these events are obviously designed, I think, in the goodwill and the good nature of things, but I guess you got to make a call, don't you?
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, unless you're God himself, I don't expect anyone to be absolutely right in everything that they do, right? Being human, we are all fallible. That goes on without saying, right? But at the end of the day, especially from the perspective of a spiritual practice, and especially from the perspective of teaching, integrity matters. Like, if you don't have integrity to whatever your values, right? Your values could be fluid. As you grow, right, your values may change. And in fact, they should change, right? But at any given moment, the integrity of values and the spiritual uprightness, so to speak, that arises from it is very important. And this is I find that a lot of people who say they're spiritual or pursue spirituality or who like to tell themselves that they're good people, they tend to lack or they tend to falter a lot in that integrity department, because at the end of the day, people want to be thought of as good people by others. They're like peer validation, right? And that, if you look at Jiddu Krishnamurti, he was very, very specific about this, who is, I would call, a mentor who I've never met, really. The sovereignty of the mind, like not constantly living for social proof, like not having that biological compulsion to live for social proof and go on and virtue signal and do all this bullshit, right? So that not succumbing to that biological group think and group acceptance paradigm, and to have the sovereignty of the mind to explore your spiritual path, your truth, your values, your integrity, is very important from a spiritual sense, in my view. And it's also very important from a societal sense for teachers to create a safe environment, like especially with children, especially in the martial arts, because martial arts can be rough, right? I mean, any kind of physical activity that pits one human being against another has to deal with a whole lot of ingrained characteristics in humans and animals, so to speak, that comes up in these encounters that are somewhat physical, right? So there's a very high degree of duty of care. And whether it's for a short workshop or a long workshop or a teacher-student relationship or whatever that may be, when someone assumes the role of a student, they're placing a lot of trust in the teachers and the senior students and the organizers to create a safe environment for them, right? This is of paramount importance. I don't know if you have seen my interview with Kevin Seekers, maybe now a year and a half back, something like that. Like, Kevin is amazing. Like, he gets straight to the point, very eloquent, and he especially talks there about how important it is to create a safe environment in the martial arts community where someone can train and a lot of the time deal with the traumas that they bring and work through them constructively in a safe setting. So if your setting triggers your traumas, or if your setting exploits them or puts you in an unsafe position where you're vulnerable to someone really hurting you, it's not helpful. So I think it's of paramount importance in the communities like martial arts or spiritual practice, whatever that may be, to create a safe environment where people can come in and they can safely open up and be vulnerable to have their past traumas and issues worked out and worked through in a constructive way. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Like, at the end of the day, I don't care. You could be the most skilled human being in the world in a particular aspect. I mean, nobody's perfect at everything, right? You could be the most skilled human being in one practice, but at the end of the day, if you're an asshole in other ways, or you're not if you're not basically creating a safe environment for people who come to spend time with you to be themselves and explore what is being offered, I think can be quite dangerous. And the very fact that people don't have this, and to make it worse, people exploit this, is the reason we have cultish behavior very common in martial and spiritual arts, right? Because not only do they not create a safe environment, they actively exploit it for their own benefit, which is even worse. Because at the end of the day, right? I mean, sorry for ranting about this long,
You go for it,
going
bro.
on so long.
Right. I got my coffee.
Because it's something that's a bit close to me, simply because I've seen my friends getting hurt, and I've seen so many people who completely lose it and go off the deep end after due to the consequences that arose from having put their trust in a teacher, right? I've seen these things happen, so it's kind of like, I wouldn't say sensitive, but it's an important topic for me because I've seen enough of how bad these things can be. So I mean, realistically speaking, right, from martial arts perspective, I know people like to talk big, but at the end of the day, I'm not saying everybody, but most people who get attracted to martial arts or fighting or whatever it may be, right, in that kind of like physically aggressive or physically confrontational way, they get attracted to it because on some level they feel that they don't have enough power. Like, they feel that they don't have the power to control the environment, and they don't feel safe. That's this underlying thing. It could be like, when you're a kid, you get beaten up in school, or it could be that, when you're little, your parents fought a lot and you couldn't do anything about it, right? There could be many reasons. But at the end of the day, people get attracted to these things because of some past experience that makes them want to feel powerful or feel that they can protect themselves, right? Now, of course, this gets convoluted by the desire to dominate others and blah, 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 and all these other things. But this is why, like in the study of martial arts at least, you work through that. You work through the layers. The first thing might be that you want to feel that you can dominate others, but then we ask, like, why do you want to feel this way, right? Can we do something else? Can we show you your own physical abilities to the extent that you no longer feel insecure, that you always want to dominate the others? Maybe now you feel secure in your own ability to know that if something bad arises, I can handle myself. So it shifts from I want to beat everyone else, I want to be the big dog, I want to dominate, to hey, I want to be stronger, I want to be faster, I want to be better at doing what I do. So it shifts focus from dominating others to mastering yourself. So that's kind of like the first step you want in the martial arts, right? Like in the, even in the fighting arts, right? Like, sport fighting, for example, a lot of people who don't want to turn the light inwards like that go on for a long time wanting to dominate others, right? And some people, not everybody, but some people who've been through that path, they recognize that this is not the solution to what we're looking for. We need to turn the light inwards. And you can see it like very clearly with people like Mike Tyson. Like, if you look at his evolution over the years and how his view has changed, right? Like, even though he still has that, like, so to speak, the animal within him, you can see how he has turned the light inwards and it's become more about mastering himself. And it's a beautiful, amazing thing to see in another human being, right? Because you can relate to it, right? I mean, we've all been there. I used to be an absolute bully in school when I was a little kid, right? And it took a while for me to just basically kind of step back from it, or rather not even step back from it, but be able to see through it and kind of understand that, like, this is people hurting other people. Like, it's just basically that was what was going on. And it took a while for me to recognize that and so on and so forth. So shifting from dominating, or shifting from the knowing that you can always dominate others and to prove yourself that you want to dominate others as a sense of security, shifting that inwards to mastering yourself as a method of building a sense of security is kind of where you want to go with these arts. So the point is, sorry about the long rant, but the point is that most people who get attracted to these arts have something to prove to themselves, if not anyone else, right? So there is trauma that is coming into it because these things take a lot of work, right? So there has to be some motivation that is strong enough to keep people engaged and keep going through these things until they start seeing some results, right? So once you start seeing some results, then the results themselves can become the reward. But until then, right, there's a lot of work that goes in. So and you have to be vulnerable, you have to be open. It's confronting. So you have to have some motivation, and generally, not always, but the people who stick to these things, they are trying to address some trauma they bring in with them, right? So in a sense, the more novice they are at these things, the more safe environment you want to create for them, because they're coming to you or to an event you're participating in looking for a solution to a problem that they find significant enough that they want to put actual work into. So there's a lot of responsibility, I think, and Demo has spoken about this, and a lot of teachers have spoken about it, but you got to be very careful with these things, and there's a lot of duty of care, so to speak, right? It's again, like if you're in a situation where you're not even a teacher, right? If you're a confidant or a good friend, when someone wants you to listen, right? If they're using you at least even as a sounding board, right? It has to be about them and not about you. I mean, obviously we can't completely make it about them because, assuming that we're not enlightened and so on and so forth, right? it can't be completely about them, but at the end of the day, you have to at least make an effort to keep a lot of you out of it and truly attend to the other person or the other people, so that you can be there for them in the way that they need you to be there for them. Right. So that's kind of what I was. Sorry about the long segue
That's
back
all
and
good, bro.
forth, but
That's all good. No,
but
yeah. I just want to say, that there are ways to set up a learning environment to be conducive to high quality outcomes, and there are many variables to take into consideration. And
Mhm,
one of those is that, if you're teaching someone to play guitar, like I've done, I use this analogy a lot because I have a lot of experience with it. You can
mhm,
set them up for that. You may give them a lot of very pleasing results early on. The problem is, though, is that you're giving them sloppy technique that has to be adjusted later. That might actually hurt their progress and their enthusiasm and their spirit to continue these types of things. And I can see this, especially with things where, when we're talking about spiritual matters, where you place yourself in a situation of trust with a teacher, and you just sort of like, okay, all right, okay, I'm going to let certain guards down so that it can be more get back and forth here. That gets me at a much deeper level. You know, things hit a bit harder, when you drop those guards down. And so if the teacher makes a whoopsie, the long game of fixing that issue can essentially take longer. And you don't want to hurt your students. You don't want to unnecessarily
mhm,
disadvantage them or cause them unnecessary things. And so and obviously, in today's climate, especially how influential pop culture is, and celebrity culture and political culture, all this type of thing, this identity politics, da 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 da.
mhm,
We have this thing with, you know, the power fantasy where people can live out, their things through the screen, and that's where they get a lot of their social cues from. Is what they see as
mhm,
being, oh, if it's on the movie screen, it must be somewhat socially acceptable in some way or another, so people will pick up on things. And that will often get people to go and explore these things. Will be this idea of like, oh wow, like I remember seeing empty force displayed, whether it was real or not, back in the day on YouTube, or this a type of fudge, and I was like, oh man, imagine I could be the only guy in the hood that knows this stuff. Now, when I went down the track of like seeking to learn more and experience this for myself, I was confronted, and the same with being a healer, being a Reiki practicer or an energy healer.
mhm,
I was confronted with a lot of humility, opportunities to discover where my humility was, because I wasn't getting the big outcome all the time. You kind of
mhm,
just got to let it be, right? And you kind of like, you that, like you said, having other people in the physical external environment is a great feedback monitor, like, for
mhm,
your inner world. And I kind of see that others are almost like a great mirror. If I have a problem with someone else, I often go, okay, well, how is that maybe reflected within me? Is that something I need to deal
mhm,
with? Because I've seen something. So, but as far as being responsible with your teaching, especially with, different topics and different teachings are going to have, like I said, people are going to be a bit more vulnerable. And when we're talking about things that are like you and others, like I remember you talking to Damo Mitchell about this too, about gurus and teachers that are maybe don't have the best intention, but they put on a very plausible and convincing facade that gets people in and gets them across the trust line. And then,
mhm,
they're basically building up a club. And like you said, the cultish behavior is a real thing, people. Everyone out there, cultish behavior is a real thing. And, we want discerning, critical minded people out there. Sorry, I'm going on my own little thing here, but I just wanted to back up what you're saying, because I do resonate with a lot of what you're saying here, brother, because I'm looking out in my neighborhood and I'm seeing things go south a little bit. And, in communities that I have influence in, like you said, you don't have to be a teacher, but if you have the ear
mhm,
of certain people, and especially at stages of maturity where they're quite impressionable, you got to take that on, because, that can, in a selfish way, that could affect your own karma later down the track as well. And, but just like wanting to do the best by the people that you come across, you discover a lot of this on the path, as I'm sure you have, as you've discovered, like I wasn't always a saint. and I'm not really, but I'm working towards, higher virtues and things like this. But I've had many opportunities to sort of reflect and go, you know what, I could play this a lot better and do a lot better by the people. And like you said, care. How much do you truly care about the thing that you do? Because that will overspill into all areas of how you conduct yourself.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that experience, because I think it's it's really helpful to actually keep it real by like you were saying, like every human being you meet in your life, right, or even not meet in your life physically, right, they're a mirror, right? They're a mirror into yourself, and anyone who has spent a fair bit of time spending time with themselves, truly attending to who they are, the human experience, understands that life is not lived alone, right? Life is, we are co-evolving, we are unfolding the process of creation through, I mean, I wouldn't even limit it to sentient, but that the process of creation is unfolding through everybody in a collective way. So we are just a part of it, right? So in this moment, I'm not just living my life. We are living a collective experience, because my thoughts are not mine. My thoughts have, I mean, it has a lot of proximate and distal causes, but at the very proximal level, my thoughts are collective right now. My thoughts and my words that I'm presenting or putting out there is a collective effort between you and me. It's not just me, right? I mean, if you said something else, I might have thought about something else, right? It's like I don't have complete agency of my thoughts even in this moment, right? And we never do. Like, my thoughts are influenced by the experiences of my great 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 grandfather, if it was significant enough, that could have happened thousands of years ago. So it's a life is a collective experience, and there are characteristics that, or shortcuts, we've gotten used to maximize on a species survival. Like, for example, when there is to reduce the cognitive burden of processing information in a group environment or a pack environment, we have this evolutionary desire to be less cognitively burdened by handing over the processing and decision making to someone else that we experientially know is good at making the right decisions. So this process gets hijacked all the time, right? Like, a classic example of this is American society, where American society, there's a tendency for people to believe that if that guy is rich, he must know what he's doing. Because he's rich, he's achieved wealth, right? So there's a lot of there are cultural biases like that. But the point is, at the end of the day, at a human level, we have this evolutionary bias to hand over discernment and reasoning and understanding to someone who has a higher social status than us, because that's the evolutionary environment where we tend to where we have optimized for energy efficiency and maximize group survival, right? So this gets hijacked in today's environment all the time, because first of all, everyone is trying to monetize our attention, right? Every piece of attention that you get from someone is an opportunity to throw some advertising at it and make money off it, right? So our attention is monetized today as it has never been before. And attention deficit right now is becoming the biggest human issue, because if I look at longitudinally through my own experience, with the sort of explosion of social media, our attention spans are continuously dropping. Like, people don't have the patience to listen to or read 4 sentences these days, right? Like, everyone everything in like 15-second clips. So, like, attention is what we are losing in the modern society. So that creates a cognitive burden and the stress of dealing with all this information. And we have this underlying bias to hand it over to someone else. Like, please tell us what to think, right?
Yeah.
And so the only decision that we need to make is that, is that guy our man, or is that lady our woman? And if she is, well, then I'm just going to follow what she says, because it's just too hard to figure this out all myself, right? or stay on top of it myself, right?
Yeah.
So this is the reason why we have a lot of these situations where it's right, the environment is right today for people to establish cult-like followings, because people are looking to reduce their cognitive burden. They want that lens that they can look at life through, that makes things simpler than their ordinary experience. And they want that lens. They want to be under someone's leadership that they have some faith will make the right decisions and tell them what to do or what to
Mm.
think, right? So this is why I think, like, it's kind of in like when you look at descriptions of the environment, the description of what it was like when Buddha was born, which subsequently led to some of his decisions and the way he structured his message. You can clearly see that the environment we are today has a lot of similarities to this, where there's a lot of little packs out there, right? And there are so many people willing to become a part of the pack so they can feel special, they can feel secure, they don't have the cognitive burden anymore because someone is telling them what to do and how to think.
Mm.
So, yeah, we live in interesting times.
Yeah, and this is something close to my heart as well, because I follow pop culture trends somewhat, because I can use it as a barometer and a general compass direction for which way society is going. Now, with the 15-second video, basically like it's like stimulus hopping. The thing's it's only shiny for 5 seconds. Then I've got to get the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. I saw this a lot when I was working in schools. One of my challenges was trying to keep the kids' attention. And as soon as I pulled all the posters off the wall in my teaching studio, I was suddenly able to get them to focus. If I was teaching in a school library, they were just constantly stimulated all the time and couldn't focus. So there is definitely a very well-funded sort of like, and I'll just say it might sound a bit conspiratorial, but I'm cool with that. Basically, a well-funded effort to basically entrain short attention spans, because that just makes it hard for people to sort of go deep on topics and stay engaged, so that those naturally emerging wisdoms don't have a chance to pop up, because now they've got their attention somewhere else. So they only get the surface level exposure, and that's where the capture is. And and this is one of the reasons why I put that esoteric Taiji as the as the heading, is because we haven't talked before like this, but these practices are beneficial and helpful, and just even one respect is that they're going to, martial arts in general, when taught well, will teach you basically those highly qualitative, like high quality cognitive skills as part of what you're doing. And this essentially can help kind of bring things back on track, in my view. I'm a community man. I live in a community that my family has had iterations of being very involved and very influential. And I can see that martial arts, when taught well, I'm not a martial artist so much myself nowadays. I'm looking for it, I got to say. I've had a nudge to get into Tai Chi and maybe Wing Chun. But as far as like things that help the situation, they can be hijacked or used incorrectly and cause even more problems. And it's great to have this conversation with you, bro, because, some people might not know that what they're doing is actually unhelpful to their martial development and also their subsequent spiritual development, whether they're working them together or side by side or whatever. So, just to bridge, unless you've got some commentary on that, when we talk about esoterics in martial arts, and I mean, I've checked out a bit of the Tai Chi community out there, and it's pretty hot. It's pretty contentious. As soon as we start talking about the sensation or these various things that produce unlikely or unusual results, I like how you use the word unusual. These things can captivate interest and get us genuinely seeking for things that are outside of the normal. And that can help us peek behind the curtain a little bit to go, surely some of the people that are responsible for how we view the world, who are feeding us reality, know about some of these things at some level. Why are these things so squashed, and why are there just Why are there so many hollow forms out there that don't have substantialness to it when we hear all these amazing stories from history about people being able to demonstrate great feats and things? And you've got a stack of videos on this, and we'll definitely have a look at your YouTube. But I'd love to hear you talk about the benefits of exploring and being open to the woo, or how it can benefit.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time we have actually, but there's a fair few things in that I'd like to unpack.
You just go for it, bro. Just go for it. I know you're on
Okay,
a time limit, but you go for it.
so I'll start from the top, right? So basically, from a neuroscience perspective, I don't have sufficient confidence personally that human beings in our current form within this vessel, so to speak, have the ability to experience reality as it truly is. So that's basically my personal view from all the research that I've seen, right? And so whether we like it or not, everything that we look at is interpreted through a perceptual model. Like if you look at our senses don't sense anything on the outside per se. They change to something that we consider to be external to us. But what we sense is only the change within our sensory organs. We don't have direct access to anything outside of us. Everything that we do is interacting within us, right? And there's various levels of distortions and optimizations and all sorts of things involved that trail through millions of years of evolution, your family life, the environment you grew in, your genetics, and so on and so forth, right? But at the end of the day, when these sensory organs change their state due to whatever correlation it may have on the other side, then we bring in all kinds of perceptual models into interpreting this to derive meaning out of it, right? And we learn, some of this is evolutionary programmed into our structure. Some of these things we learn as a baby, as we're growing, we over specialize in it. Some of them is family influence, traumatic experiences, blah, 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 like all the rest of it, right? So at the end of the day, every interpretation that we have of reality is through a series of distorted lenses that exist for whatever purpose, right? That purpose may not be serving you right now, but they do exist, right? So to me, whether it's Tai Chuan or whether it's, say, a so-called spiritual practice, right, is a process of going inwards, experience, try to get closer to the source of things so that you are seeing through less distortion. So I'm letting go of my ancestor who heard a particular sound and survived because he escaped a tiger, and now my biology wants to think that if a certain sound is made from a certain direction, I'm perceiving a tiger jumping at me, right? It's no longer serving me, right? Yeah. So you're stripping away the layers, trying to get to the source experience, so to speak, right? And in doing so, we wear different lenses, like Hermetics is one of them, right? And Buddhism may be one of them, right? Some type of relationship with some entity or something like that might be so badly. Like when we were in a more evolutionarily rough environment, not having a working model of environment meant much higher chance of death. If you can't attribute a certain sound, say for example, to a credible respond to it, you're most likely dead, right? So on the stimuli, because it meant that it could be life or death. If there's a rustling sound, I'd rather assume it's a tiger trying to attack me rather than wait for too late to figure it out, right? So there's a benefit in over-indexing on these signals that might be life-threatening, even like that, like sorry, in our minds, right? There's not being down these layers of perceptual models. And then the core skill that one must develop is to let that need for security go in order to recognize that and accept the fact that you most likely will never know what reality truly is. So you have to be in a position to choose the right lens for the right situation, right?
Mm.
Now, one of the biggest problems I have with a lot of these people on the woo side is that they use a certain perceptual model, a way they structure their experience, their inner experience of whatever that may be, that gives them some good results, right?
Mm.
But first of all, they're unable to let go of it to progress further down the path because they're so holding on to it so strongly because it got them some results, right?
Mm.
And the second problem is they actually end up believing that this is what reality is. Like their distorted view at that point, which they didn't ordinarily have. Sure, it may be a bit more detailed view, and it may be a bit more delusional view because there's so much detail now which wasn't there. So it's like, oh wow, it must be real, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, right? I mean, anyone who's touched psychedelics know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's a very visceral process, right? Like more bells and whistles doesn't necessarily mean it's more true, right?
Mm.
If you are unable to recognize the fabrication process of your mind happening in real time to some degree, you may not know that you're imagining all this shit in your head, right? So this is why going inwards is so important. So anyway, the point is that whether it's Hermetics or Tai Chi or Buddhism or Christianity or Hinduism, whatever it may be, right? These lenses, you have to be very careful not to get deluded into believing that this distorted lens is the reality. Map is not the territory, right? There is a certain usefulness in structuring your experience in that way through a particular set of perceptual models and beliefs, so to speak, or working theories. Better put, beliefs have more longitudinal impact. So I don't really believe in beliefs because I don't think you need to believe in anything because reality will tell you what it is. I don't need to have belief about it, right?
You
Just
don't have
need to be open.
You don't have to believe in gravity for it to affect you.
Exactly right. And when it's affecting you, you know that, okay, I'll call that gravity, right? I don't have to believe in it because it doesn't stop existing because I don't believe in it anymore, right? So in that way, right, all these perceptual models add value. Like Hermetics has a series of these things. I mean, like for example, if like one of my friends who's done a bit of research into because he was almost an Olympian. It's a friend of a friend, but because so through him and through some other sources, I've been hearing all these stories about how the U.S. Olympic gymnast team actually got really good. And it's really interesting because the Soviets were at the time beating the Americans in gymnastics all the time, and then Americans turned to some Soviet defectors who were actually Olympic trainers in Soviet Russia, and they wanted to understand, like, how is your training different? Like, why are you guys consistently better? Because I'm pretty sure that we have more technological tools available to us and we're throwing more resources into our Olympics program than Soviet Union might be. But why are you guys consistently better, right? So one of the things that they realized was that in the Soviet training, there was a lot of perceptual modeling involved. Depending on a particular task, the athletes were given specific instructions on how to structure their inward experience of that process, right? So for example, like say that like if I was doing something that required balance, right? Like required me to be consistently maintaining my balance, right? Depending on the person, if I structure my experience as something that was pleasant and successful in my past, like, beautiful day in spring, like a beautiful little woods, little stream, there's like one log across the stream and I walked through it and I felt, secure, I felt stable, I felt the gentle breeze in my hair, that type of thing, right? By getting that kind of perceptual model that unified all your resources in achieving this task perfectly, right? If you bring that perceptual model into your current training for that particular person and possibly many others, I'm not saying this is the exact one they use, but I'm giving an example, right? This can seriously impact your performance, right? Say, for example, if someone is putting in a joint lock, right? The perception of space right? The perception of space and maximizing the perception of space creates, like, pulls you out of that over specialized neurological response where you're basically doing one thing and you keep on trying it to make it work against the force, to a more aware environment where you are more aware of your options and you literally perceive that as having more space to move. And you can see the anticipatory postural adjustments and the stabilizers changing to prime you to like a greater range of movement than just one particular hyper-focused thing, right? So there is all these things, right? So the perceptual models give you results, right? But doesn't mean that they are the reality. You're still fabricating it in your mind, but it's useful, right? So there are many environments where these perceptual models are important. So, I mean, being a school teacher, I'm sure you can understand and appreciate when we say, like, we tell people, like, okay, look at this problem in this way, right? So we have given people a framework to put all the information into in a way that it makes it easier to work through, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be or even need to be what is real. It's just the way we are looking at it, right? So this applies across the board in great many number of things, whether it's spirituality or Taiji or whatever. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I think one of the biggest problems we have is that when people start seeing results or some results, they desperately want to believe that this is the be all and end all, and this is the true focus of the universe, right? I mean, so for example, right, when I start training with Mark, for example, right, one of the most fundamentally most valuable things that Mark taught me in the very beginning, right? I mean, there was much more after that, but in the very beginning was that the building the ball exercise, right? So what the building the ball does is that it creates this sensation of life force, right? What Mark calls life force, right? Different people call different things life force, but what Mark calls life force, right? So this sensation is created haptically by opening of the joints and stretching of your soft tissue in a way that the joints feel more spacious. So that gets interpreted by your brain as density of space surrounding you, right? So in reality, there's no quantum field effects happening between your hands. That's absolute bullshit. That's like you making up bullshit to justify what you're doing is pseudoscience, right? But what's really happening is that experience of you can see it, right? That if I were to experience life force between my hands, my body changes. My body changes in a way that is most conducive to perceiving that sensation. So now my whole body is more elastically connected just by having that sensation. Now, if I switch that sensation to feeling that sensation in all of space around me and including me, see how my body changes? My spine stretches, like my vertebrae open. So now my experience is that I'm immersed in a field of life force, right? Like it's got nothing to do with quantum field effects. It's got absolutely nothing. That's no, I mean, electric and magnetic, they're just sensations, right? I mean, this is not always true, right? When in some Taoist Negon traditions, when they say electric, it's fucking electric. Like they fire like basically light, like sparks from their fingers, like Palpatine, right? I have not seen a single hermeticist do it, right? Like, when they say magnetic, they pull things to their hands, right? Like in some yogic traditions, I've seen people just move things, like literally pull things, right? So my point is that these things don't have to be to that degree to have tangible benefits right now, right? You don't have to be Palpatine to make use of, for example, what we would call in hermetics as electric, right? It's basically a certain quality of feeling that can be applied to the body, that can be applied to emotions, that could be applied to a number of things that allow us to interact and engage it in a way that's not conventionally possible. That's the value of it. But you don't have to jump down the rabbit hole and go like, oh, well, this is reality because God told me in my dream. Like, I mean, what the fuck, right? So this is where people go wrong. So they get some results and then they take a real 90-degree turn and drive into a wall. And then they dig into a rabbit hole, right? So this thing, like, so there's one camp that doesn't get the idea of perceptual models, doesn't understand how we as people and as a society use it all the time. Like whenever someone says, look at this problem this way, yeah, I'm actually applying a perceptual model to it, right? So there's nothing new about these perceptual models, right? The perceptual models can structure your inward experience in any human bloody way, as long as it gives you the result that you're looking for that is not efficiently achieved by any other way, right? So this is the value of it. And a lot of arts like Chinese internal arts, the people figured this out, and that's the genius of it. They figured out these really cool perceptual models that get the right results across a large population of people, right? Hermetics is the same, right? Like basically when we're dealing with elemental qualities, they're perceptual models, and they get results in different domains across a large range of people in a very cool way, right? So that's the power of it. But then you get the other side who really believe that this is what reality is, because they want to feel special, that, oh, we have some knowledge that the normies don't. You don't get it, but we get it. This is reality, right? Well, no, because at the end of the day, be real, right? Right? I mean, well, screw it, right? Like, I was in this interesting situation where not with the hermeticist, with the yogi, where I got into the situation where I was curious. I was curious what the perception of Agni or fire, like how far it goes. And he just basically put his finger on fire and lit his cigarette with it, right? And then he basically put his hand on fire like that, and then just turned it into like frost kind of thing, and all these things. So yeah, these things can be obviously developed by some people with some methods to a very extreme degree, right? But the thing is, like him like lighting a cigarette and all these things, it may have been only in my mind. I just don't know, right? Because that was my perception of it and my experience of it, right? Doesn't mean it was real. He could have just induced it in my mind, right? Doesn't matter either way, right? The point is that there's one camp that is so stuck to their ordinary experience of reality that they don't have any fluidity in their mind to consider an alternate way of looking at things, having an alternate perspective for whatever reason. They are so stuck in their limited experience that they can't get their minds to consider or look at a problem in a different way. That's why they tend to be very extremist, right? Because they're unable to look at things from different viewpoints or different perspectives, right? And there's the other end, which is basically who had some success with the fluidity in their mind. They completely go off the rail because they don't recognize the difference between fabrication versus perception. Now they're fabricating layers and layers and layers upon it, right? So, when you enter a room, right, the brain might give you like this integrated perception of the feel of the room, right? Now they will go on build on it and say like, oh yeah, when I went to the door, this deity came and the deity told me, whispered in my ear, these sweet nothings about how I can help each and every one of these people, right? Yeah, fair enough, right? If that helps you, run with it. But didn't mean it really happened. Your mind fabricated it for whatever reason. So if you're looking inwards, it's not deep enough yet for you to recognize fabrication as it happens, right? Then you're faced with this problem, right? A little knowledge is dangerous, right? Little skill is dangerous, right? So now you have this fluidity of the mind, but you don't have the mechanism that tells you what is fabrication and what is like perceptual modeling, what is interpretation. Like you don't differentiate between any of these brain mechanisms. You lump it all into like this is reality. And you end up down a rabbit hole. And the both end of these camps are constantly at each other, right? Because they're basically fighting each other's worldviews from both these extremes. And so people are polarized towards it, away from a balanced view of the usefulness of perceptual modeling versus it not being reality, right? So you have these two extreme camps like fighting each other. And it's unfortunate, but that's what humans do, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean these sort of inherited models of perception, or things that we're born with that and then we step outside of those and go and explore others, because we're
Mm-hmm.
provided with a lot of ways of operating in the world just for purely for survival and functional,
Mm-hmm.
being able to operate in the world, right? But
Yep.
then, of course, we go exploring these other things that are quite maybe culturally diverse, or it's got a context that it's fascinating to us for some reason. We're not sure why. There's a mystique or an intrigue about us that pulls us in,
Mm-hmm.
and then we absorb ourselves into that. But yeah, I mean, even in there's various forms of it may have the same word. It may be called Tai Chi, but how many forms of Tai Chi are there, and how many and what
Exactly.
and then there's different types of skillfulness that can be demonstrated. And
Yep.
so one of the reasons why I love listening to you guys talk, especially when you sit and say with Adam and Damo, is that you talking about there's like is there a clear line between sort of like these I'm doing the biomechanical movements, and then I'm actually doing the internal alchemy, and then there's that kind of like, yeah, I'm getting some results, so this must be it. But there's you can pitch your tent halfway up the mountain because you're getting some kind of cool results, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like and I heard Mark Rasmus talk about this too. It's like, whatever you get to, you got to let that go so you can keep moving up, because
Yep.
there's experiential phenomena at each levels of the scale, if you want to use that model. And these these are like almost like temptation traps, to see, can you let go, and can you let go of the thing that you clutch onto, because that may be the thing. Because I find that hanging out in the same space too long, I just start getting bored. I want to know what else is there. There must be more. There must be more to this. And so I don't know if it's because I'm seeking novelty, or if it's that I know that there's a part of me that goes, you know what, there's more beyond this. And so when I first started exploring sort of like book forms of certain esoteric practices, I'm like going, I can kind of pick up on what they're saying, but there's an experiential element that's missing here. And just because I've never eaten that chocolate doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And
That's right.
and this is what one of the reasons like I said, what I want to bring you on is that, there's a hard form of perceptual model out there that says everything that you're seeing it's all mechanical. There's nothing else to it than that. And that you can do interesting things with mechanics. And then there's a whole nother strata of, that goes on that's available. And I think as far as an internal form like Tai Chi goes, and I keep referring to this, I know, and I'm just using that model because I put it in the title, so I guess we should give the audience a little bit of that frame of reference. But how would you separate, like, could I mean, I'm not trying to polarize a community that's already quite polarized, but is there a clean line, as far as like, okay, there's benefit to doing the forms and loosening and relaxing, and then there's this alchemical practice which can take you further. And I see guys like Nathan Shredney, he's right into Hermetics and Kabbalah and that, and this putting the field around you can inform your structure. Like you said, when I float myself, suddenly everything just open up, and it's incredible. It's an amazing feeling, and then I can do things from there that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do, because it's changed the way I view reality. This model opens certain doors and closes others. This one closes ones and certain others. But some people have been out there. They've been on the trail for a while, Brother Joey. They're not feeling very satisfied. And where can people take their practice to the next level? I'm sorry, I'm dancing around something. I can't quite put my finger on it here, but I think you know what I'm pointing at. It's like people are
Yes.
unsatisfied, and they will walk away from something because they haven't been found what they're looking for.
So I would say that, I mean, my personal sort of guiding light in a way is to just basically keep it real, right?
Hmm.
We live in a physical universe, right? And I mean, everything is mechanical at the end of the day. It's what mechanics you're talking about, right? I mean, you can be talking about Newtonian mechanics of the physical bodies, which is extremely complex, which goes a lot more further than like F equals ma of like throwing a ball at something, right? And which is unfortunate that people can only wrap their heads around that simplistic model and try to apply it to extremely complex systems like two humans interacting, which has massive neuromuscular control implications outside. So like even the neuromuscular control is mechanics. It's the mechanics of neuromuscular control, right? So there could be mechanics of visual perception. Yeah, it's mechanics. It's mechanics of how visual perception works and how you can, if you understand it, how you can manipulate it to get an advantage, right? Fainting in boxing is a classic example, right? So all these things can happen in so many layers, and at the end of the day, it's all mechanical, right? So the problem is that when people say mechanics, they're trying to reduce all this complex interaction into like, grade 4 or 3 rigid body mechanics in Newtonian physics,
Yes.
right? Or on the other extreme, you get people who say, oh, that's quantum. Like, I mean, oh, come on, give me a fucking break, right? I mean, it's got nothing to do with like anything quantum at this scale, right?
It's
I mean,
that word's so diluted now, isn't it? Does it mean anything anymore?
I know. I can't remember who this was. Like, one person was saying, like, if you want to understand the feeling of life force between your hands, you need to understand quantum electromagnetism. I'm like, all right. So basically, I'll go and teach like only like 3 people in CERN who really understand the nature of quantum electrodynamics can learn this, right? That's complete nonsense because they've latched so hard onto their belief that this has to be real, this has to be something profound. They're missing what is profound. What is profound is the immense level of neuromuscular coordination and control over the autonomic this one sensation is giving you, right? Like you get to organize your body in a very different way just based on the creation of this haptic perception or haptic sensation of life force between your hands. Like that's the magic, right? But they're looking at the wrong thing, right? So they basically look far and miss what's right in front of them, right? So keep it real, I would say, is the most important thing with anything, I think. Like, because at the end of the day, everything is mechanical. At what level of mechanics, at what domain of mechanics, and it doesn't have to, like, life is multi-domain, right? Life exists in multiple domains at the same time. You can't limit it to one thing. If you limit it to one thing, then we are putting on a lens that only sees that, right? Like we like our perception is perspective dependent, right? The ability to integrate and reconcile more perspectives gives you the ability to get closer to what's real, but doesn't necessarily make it real, right? You're a little closer to reality than one perspective gives you, because if you can, so this is again one of those things where people find difficult in the modern day because we are so tuned to emotionally get enraged or emotionally get worked out so that we may click that buy button, right? We are losing our ability to hold more than one perspective dependent truth in our heads at the same time. We always have to have that one view that we can go, oh, this is the right view. Everything else goes away. I feel so much better, right? But that's not real, right? I mean, the thing is, multiple perspective dependent truths exist because that's what it looks like from that perspective, right? So what could that underlying thing look like that looks that particular way from all different perspectives when you look at it, right? That's how you get closer to the truth. By having the ability to reconcile and integrate multiple perspective dependent contextual truths, it allows you to zero in on the truth. It's like triangulating location, right?
Yep.
So it's the same thing, right? So the more perspective dependent truths that your model can reconcile, the closer your model is to what it really is. But at the end of the day, it's still a model. You know what I mean? There can always be a perspective that is not consistent with your model, at which point you need to update the model if that perspective dependent truth is authentic or legit, right? So, life is a very fluid thing, man. Like it's like, I mean, I know the need for security is a biological and a visceral thing.  But unless you let go of it at a very fundamental way, your mind is always going to latch on to these models that make life simpler for it in some way, and then goes on to create beliefs based on that this is the only thing that exists, is the real truth, so now you can feel secure. And then it becomes a part of the identity. The people go like, oh, I believe in this, so I'm one of these. Like, going from belief to identity, like, I mean, I understand that it creates a certain efficiency in your being to process belief as a part of identity. That's an inward mental process, right? I get it. But it is no longer serving us. We are not in that environment where we have to believe that the sound behind us is a tiger and identify with some guy who runs away very fast in that situation to always escape from the tiger, right? So that's not necessary anymore, right? So, you don't want to, like, you certainly don't want these things at your identity level, and even at the belief level it's not really necessary, because the reality will tell you what reality is. You don't have to believe one way or another. It's plain to experience. It's there, right?
Yeah.
So and then you can start playing with these glasses and experience things in a way that is more useful. You know what I mean? And generally, right, like for example, right, like, I know for a fact that what I believe right now, every word that I've spoken to you, if I look at it tomorrow, I'll feel differently about it. I'll have different views. The only thing I know about my beliefs or my so-called knowledge is that it's either going to be partially wrong tomorrow or completely wrong, right? So there's nothing to believe in, right? Right now, I basically interpreted all the sum total of experiences that I have in a certain way, and often in a very poor way. And my experience will be different tomorrow, and it'll be interpreted differently, right? Like, why do I want to limit myself into this stupid thing called belief? Because what's it giving me? Nothing. It makes me partially blind to what is really happening. There's no advantage for me in that, right? But when it's concerned other things, right, obviously belief helps, right? Like the belief that I believe that at this point in my journey, my purpose of existence is to surrender to the divine, right? And be an instrument of the divine without myself getting involved in it, right? So that's a belief. That means it's a more longer term working model, right? But it's still not immutable, right? At the end of the day, towards the end of my life, I might go like, hey, that was funny. That was some bullshit, wasn't it? You know? So, but I can't do that if I ingrain it in my identity level, right? Because I'm the guy who believed in that, so I can't be a fool because I believed in some bullshit, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's like you said, all these things that made sense to us in a limited context to get where we are as a species is not applicable to the complexity of the problems that we're looking at, and it's certainly not helpful.
I want to say too that, as we find ways to climb up the ladder or the stairway to heaven, or what we want to call it, we find we discover new vantage points that give us a wider view, or what we would like to think of a wider view, and we can see how that model that we were using to get us there was very helpful. But I find that having comparative analysis in my regular toolkit of like exploring different systems, and you take two diverse systems, from different cultural contexts, and you can see there's some shared understandings there. And that is like, okay, that's actually really helpful here. It's like, if you're going to be a practicer and try and make a living as, say, a teacher or something like this, you would you choose a form that you can, especially if you want it to support your physical life, you choose a form that's familiar to a wide public, perhaps, because if you want a good capture of potential students and things, you start them off at the base level at the very mechanical, I should say biophysical type mechanical, not the mechanics of the other realms of operation. You said that beautifully, because cause and effect exists, right? We can explore this, right? And each model will be slightly appealing to some more than others. I have friends who are very much into this kind of they love following Vedic and Hindu types of worldviews and things like that. And then I have friends who are more hermetically minded and that. And then there are people who are able to move between these models, because over here it's perfect for this situation, and over here it's maybe less so. And I find that the easiest way to sort of relate what I've just said is that some people learn better and differently based on their biases and general proclivities over others. Some kids learn better this way,
Yes.
some kids learn better this way. And as a teacher, if you can, if you've just got one way of looking at it, it can contract your ability to be a potent influencer of positive change in the world too. It's good. I think it's good to be a bit nimble and agile and have a wide view and recognize that they have values, but maybe they also do have their limitations as well. And this restriction of form helps us to gives us a very clear sort of operational parameters to get to know the thing, so we can explore the length, girth, and width of it to discover it. We can see how it can be kind of stretched and innovated within. But ultimately, we can respect that system and go, okay, that's got value here, but I'm not sure how I can make it valuable over here in this part of my life, perhaps. And so,
or to this person, right? Or to this person. I can communicate model to this person because they have the right tools to absorb that model, but that may not be completely relevant to someone else because they may not have the necessary tools and experience to absorb that particular model. But if you restructure the same thing in a different model, they might be able to readily experience it, right? So this brings us to the issue of scalability, right? So now, if you look at like spiritual teachers of the past, like with their close disciples, or even people like Don Hai Chuan with Bhagwajang, right? If you look at their disciples, or even like some of the teachers of the modern day, they present their current truth, which is the experience, the sum total of the experience of their being, right? In a way that is most efficient for the student to get the most out of, right? So when two of these students meet, their worldviews may not be the same. In fact, they may be very different in very significant ways because the experience that has been presented to them to experience is different, right? But that's the most efficient way to get people further down the path. You present your reality, your experience, or where you're going in a way that is most conducive for them to take the next step from where they're at, right? Like the view may be different if they were asking you the same question 3 years later, right?
Yeah.
So basically what you're doing is that the core you're optimizing on is the efficiency of the process, right? You're helping them take their next step in the most efficient and high probability way, right? But this is not scalable. This is a one-to-one experience, right? It's not scalable, right? If you want to teach 10 people, then you have to create this average that has sort of like the most probability of hitting all 10 of them, but it may not be as efficient at hitting any single person in that way, right?
Yeah.
So when you're teaching a large number of people at the same time, the scalability issue comes into play. So what you're always present, the bigger the audience, the more average what you're presenting becomes, right? Because everyone has to get a little bit out of it, but doesn't mean any one person gets the most out of it, right? But that's the reality of scalability. This has financial issues in place, and like in terms of how many people you can reach as well. Outside of finances, would I rather help 100 people a little bit, or just help one person in a more significant way, right? So there's all those choices, right? But then this gets convoluted by the teachers of their own inner experience. So inner experience is so big to them, they're unable to empathize with someone else where they're at. So I did it this way. This was my inner experience. So this has to be it. You keep on drilling until you get it, right? It doesn't. So that's not very efficient either. And the only reason why that is very important is that for a teacher, that becomes their own experience, right? So a teacher may have basically formulated a system over the years that is a high probability of success for a large number of people, and they may say this is a system. So because it's a general audience, this is the only thing I'm going to present, so stick to it. I understand that, right? But there are also teachers who are unable to divorce their reality from their own personal experience, that they're unable to optimize for someone else, right?
Hmm.
So there are all these scalability issues, there are all these personal issues and all these things. So at the end of the day, right, like you were saying, even with something very technical, like Taiji Chuan, right? The reason why all these interpretations and the consequence, as a consequence, the different methods, the tactics, all these things exist because some people find it more accessible, right? So different strokes for different folks or different approaches are a good thing as long as it's not catastrophically messed up. Like in the sense that as long as it doesn't take you in a direction that you don't want to go, it's okay to have a path that is easy to traverse for one type of person versus another, be it
Hmm.
cultural, personal, circumstantial, whatever that may be, right? So all these different methods and views are there for a reason. It exists because some people grab that more easily than others, and they may stop there, whatever that may be, right? So the diversity, as long as each method is authentic within what they're basically applying it for, is a great thing, because that over a broader population makes skills more accessible, because there are different strokes for different folks, so to speak, right? But where we go wrong is when that becomes a religion, the identity, right?
Hmm.
My way is the only correct way. There's no more beyond that. My mind is so closed because I so want to feel secure at feeling that I'm competent, I'm an expert.
Hmm.
So I have to stay within this, and I'm going to beat everyone up who basically don't agree with it, right?
Yeah.
That's what, right? So diversity is a great thing as long as it doesn't devolve into fascism, right?
Yeah.
This is the problem that we have in today society, where we are basically kind of, the pendulum is swinging away more towards fascism, where there's these diverse beliefs, but none of those camps want to allow other beliefs to exist.
Yeah, it's actually a weird contradiction, like forced diversity, except for this group. Like
Exactly,
it's like it
exactly.
doesn't. And so people are just on this. This is a very general part of a conversation, but um, be mindful of heavily sponsored contradictions and cognitive dissonances that are being heavily, heavily pushed because they don't make sense. And it's like, well, how can this be true and this be true? You know, and how come it's like this group was getting exalted and this one's being pushed down. Now it's the other way. It's just this constant freaking. There's no real sort of yeah. It's actually quite mind boggling. Just like I said, but off the topic here. But brother, I know that you're we've gone over your time limit for your availability, so I don't want to hold you on if you need to get rocking. But I wanted to put in a bit of time into showing off your YouTube and that before you go. So, do you want to? Is there anything you wanted to share? Because I want to be conscious of your
Um,
time.
yeah, no worries, bro. Like, I mean, if you go to any of my YouTube videos, in the description, you'll see like all the YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, right? So just share it in the description if you feel like it, and that should
Yeah.
be good. I don't really want, like, if I'm out there, people can find me.
Well, you've got a great channel. I mean, you're always putting stuff up. One of my favorites of your thing was choking and hitting friends, and I think these kinds of things like just sort of like it'll help relax and break the ice for people who are exploring. And I really love your approach to things. You're an excellent articulator of your conversation. You're very elegant with your articulation. I really appreciate that. And I found everyone in this community essentially. I found them through Mark's work, who I found through a previous teacher of sorts, And one thing I've really come to appreciate is intelligent intelligent articulation. Like there's a real care behind the effort to convey understanding so that people get a very deep sort of immersion into what's being shared here. So I'm really grateful for, Joey, for discovering you. And I've really enjoyed this conversation, man. It just kind of went where it went, but it was absolutely beautiful. And, this, I will throw this up while I'm here, is that everyone, you can find Joey on YouTube at Beehole Yoga. There's the hashtag, the @ that you can search for. You can also find Joey on Instagram as well. He's quite busy on there. And like you said, it's all in the description below in the YouTube. So please go and check out Joey's content, especially if you are wanting to get into some of the real deeper aspects of esoteric's not always the best word, to be fair, because that comes with baggage as well. Like any word you use is going to come with a bunch of connotative sort of gathered meanings that are influenced by popularity and these other types of things. So, yeah, Joey, I just want to say, look, thank you so much for your time today, and I want to give you give you a chance just to maybe close out with maybe people. I get a lot of new people on the channel who are discovering Hermetics and some of these other internal forms, and as my interests change as well, my audience may be curious about these things that I talk about. One of those things is like somebody who's looking to start out with Taiji, for example, which is very popular. It's easy to find Taiji out in the community generally. What are some suggestions or advice or something you might want to share with people who are about to begin that journey, so that they can potentially save themselves unnecessary disadvantaging, so to speak?
Attention, just start and keep your eyes open. That's pretty much it, man. And everything will flow from there. Attention is what true love is, right? So give it attention. Just don't go through the motions. Just give it attention. Whether it's about the teacher, whether it's about the group, whether it's about what you're doing, just give it attention and everything will flow from it. You don't need to, the thing is, you can't decide how you're going to walk a path until you know what the path is, right? So a lot of people get stuck in this, they basically get the cart before the horse, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But again, it comes to security, right? Just start, keep your eyes open, don't fall into the trap of becoming blind with one perspective, right? Just keep it real. And don't think everything you believe.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any would you suggest any complementary practices that sit quite nicely, that do have quite different worldviews, but they seem to work nicely together? Like I said, I'm looking at, say, Tai Chi and Wing Chun, which both come obviously from the China mainland, but well, I could be wrong there in some sense too, but but Tai Chi and Hermetics, for example, is quite something that quite interests me because I can find ways of blending those two things together in a sense. You got any suggestion for things that work or play nicely together that complement and also give different angles of view?
So anything that essentially doesn't even have to be the main strategy, but anything that allows you to take the time and look at things, give things attention, right? Like Systema, right? I mean, there's this whole bunch of people who believe that Systema is all about body conditioning, and they end up kicking their balls every day to condition their balls or whatever, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But there is, within Systema, right, there is actually proper body conditioning that happens as a part of the training process. But more importantly, there's this attention being put into how things work, right? How things truly are, right? What is our experience, right? So, for example, if you look at the Systema work by Kevin Sekios, so Alex Kostick, right? It's very much like that. You attend to what you're doing and you optimize it, and it's a journey, right? It's a journey of attention, right? So anything like that allows you to attend to who you truly are, rather than mindlessly bash your head on a wall, whether it be following a Taiji form or whether it be some system of conditioning or whatever that may be, right? Just, attention is true love, brother. So in my experience currently, right? Let's put the disclaimer out there. So, don't believe in everything that you think. Don't think solely on your belief structure. And, mind is like a parachute, only works when it's open, all that stuff, right? So, just start is very important, because at the end of the day, you had to be doing something. And be open and be attentive, right? So that you don't fall into these compulsive traps that are a part of the human experience.
Great, wonderfully said. Thank you. And so let's wrap things up, because that's a beautiful way to finish. I just want to say to everyone, please go check out Joey on YouTube at Behold Yoga. You can support this channel, philrice.substack.com. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat. You guys are awesome. We did have a question, but I think we've kind of run over time here. So I'll put them in the put your questions in the comments underneath the video, and Joey might come and have a look at the video once everyone's had a chance to watch and digest. I'm sure there will be some people who have some feedback, but we'll attend to that. Joe, if I get you to stick around for just 1 minute after I close the live stream. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. I will see you again soon. Thank you to our wonderful guest, Mr. Joey Nishad. And please make sure you follow him. He's on Facebook as well. Have a beautiful day. I'll see everyone soon. Thank you so much, Joey.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, bro. Cheers.